What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It's time to continue my schedule previews / projected records for the upcoming 2023 college football season. And we continue them with the South Carolina Gamecocks. There was a schedule last year for South Carolina. The overall record for this team last year going 8-5 overall. You look at the schedule last year going 8-4 in the regular season. You look at who they played in the non-conference. They played Georgia State, Charlotte, South Carolina State, and then of course they play Clemson, which they play Clemson every year. That's one of their rival games that they happen every single year. And yeah, they ended up winning that game on the road at Clemson. So the non-conference schedule not all too tough for South Carolina last year. You look at who they played outside of the SEC East. They played Arkansas on the road. That was an early game in week number 2, and then they played Texas A&M in the middle of October. So that was a game that's a game they play every single year, so it's not like they play them each and every maybe 3 years and all that, but they played them at home last year. So yeah, all in all, a pretty good season last year for the South Carolina team. I think this was one of the best finishing teams from last year, especially in the month of November. They ended out with 2 top 10 wins against opponents. Tennessee and Clemson, those were their 2 biggest wins last year at the end of November, those final 2 regular season games. But yeah, all in all, a pretty good season last year for this South Carolina team. High expectations probably heading into this season, depending on what their schedule looks like. But they have Spencer Rattler coming back. That's the big return, I believe, for South Carolina heading into 2023. Let's now get into the schedule for 2023 for this South Carolina team. And here's that schedule for 2023. You look at who South Carolina will play in the non-conference. They'll play North Carolina here on September the 2nd in Charlotte. That is going to be a big game right there. I mean, obviously, North Carolina has their quarterback coming back. Drake May had a pretty good season, probably one of the top quarterbacks from a year ago, and probably the top quarterback heading into the ACC conference this year. And then they'll play Furman here at home. So, yeah, they'll get a easy cupcake game after that North Carolina game. And then they'll play Jacksonville State and then Clemson here at home. So, yeah, the non-conference schedule, 2 out of those 4 games are going to be tough. I mean, they'll have to play 2 FCS teams, Jacksonville State and Furman. But North Carolina, obviously going to be a tough game here to begin the season. But that's a matchup that's happened in the past. And honestly, I wish this was a game that was played every year, like North Carolina and South Carolina playing every year. But I wish it was like a home field advantage or maybe like an away game or something like that. But it is a neutral site game, so it will be played in Charlotte. And you look at who South Carolina will play outside of the SEC East. We know they're going to be playing every SEC East team, and they will play against Texas A&M on the road. They play Texas A&M every year, and this time they will be on the road. Going to be a tough place to play at Kyle Field, and then they'll play Mississippi State here at home. A rebuild mode, I believe, for Mississippi State because of, the new coaching staff coming in. So that's a winnable game, I believe, for South Carolina there on the schedule. But it's not too tough of a draw out of the West. At least it's not Alabama or LSU. I mean, that's the good news. Maybe like Auburn or something like that. But they'll have to play Texas A&M on the road. That will obviously be a tough game. But yeah, let's go through the schedule now here for South Carolina, go game by game. So they'll open things up with North Carolina here at Charlotte on September the 2nd. Pretty good week 1 game there. I'm excited for that game. I think it will be a pretty interesting matchup. 2 great quarterbacks, Drake May and, Spencer Rattler going at it. It's probably going to come down to who is the best quarterback heading into their conference for the rest of the year. And then they'll play Furman here on September the 9th, so they'll get a break after that. And then they'll play on the road at Georgia. So, yeah, that's a pretty brutal stretch there, to begin the season. Of course, you play North Carolina first, and then they'll get a cupcake game here against Furman. But then you have to go on the road at Georgia, and that will be a tough game there on September the 16th. Mississippi State on September the 23rd. Like I said, I think it's a winnable game for South Carolina considering they're at home for that game. And then they'll play on the road at Tennessee. So, yeah, the September schedule, they have to play 5 games in September, and the September schedule is really tough. You got North Carolina here in a neutral site game. You got Georgia on the road, and then you got Tennessee on the road. So that's a pretty brutal stretch month there for this South Carolina team. Florida here on October the 7th, another winnable game, I believe. We don't know what Florida is going to look like just yet. We don't really know what the roster is going to look like for that team. And then they'll play on the road at Missouri. They'll get a bye week before playing that game, and then they'll play Texas A&M on the road. So you got back-to-back road games here. Yeah, you got really tough road games this year if you're South Carolina. If you're a South Carolina team here, you got tough road games. Missouri, obviously, it's a rival game. You never know what can happen. Texas A&M will obviously be a tough one. A&M should probably be better than they were last year. And then in the month of November, they'll play Jacksonville State. They'll play Vanderbilt here on November the 11th. And then they'll play Kentucky here at home. They beat Kentucky last year. Could they do that 2 years in a row? And then Clemson here to end things out on November the 25th. So this is a pretty tough schedule for South Carolina, to be honest. I mean, North Carolina here in Charlotte. Then you got Georgia on the road. Then you got Tennessee on the road. Missouri and Texas A&M in back-to-back games. And then, of course, you got Kentucky on the – or actually, you know, at least you don't have to play, like, Kentucky on the road or anything, or Clemson on the road. But, yeah, this is a pretty tough schedule for South Carolina heading into 2023. You still got to play all those SEC East teams and everything, and that's going to be a really tough stretch. I think September, obviously, is one of the toughest stretches for South Carolina heading into this season. But now let's get to the projection here for South Carolina, and this is the scale I've been pretty much using throughout these projections. If it's a 1% game, it's a game where South Carolina has no chance of winning. 20% games, these are about a couple touchdowns of an underdog here for South Carolina. 40% in the yellow, these are games where South Carolina is going to be a heavy underdog, about a touchdown underdog. 50-50 games, they'll stay in the white. Pretty much games where I think they can go either way. 60% in the purple, pretty much games where South Carolina is going to be favored by about a touchdown. 80% games, these are where games where South Carolina is going to be favored by a couple touchdowns. And then 90% games in the green, these are games where South Carolina is going to be favored by more than 3 touchdowns. So we're just going to start with that one. We're going to start with the green games there at 90%. And I got 2 of those on the schedule. I got Furman here on September the 9th and then Jacksonville State here on November the 4th. I think these are pretty easy wins here for South Carolina. I really don't see them having any problems in this one. And I don't really see them being a green favorite against neither of these SEC teams. But these 2 games right here, South Carolina has no business of losing these games. I don't have any blue games for South Carolina because of the schedule, how tough it is. But I got some purple games. These are where South Carolina is going to be favored by about a touchdown. And I got 3 of those on the schedule. I got Mississippi State here at home, Florida at home, and then Vanderbilt here at home as well. Now, Mississippi State, they're in a rebuild year, but it's still going to be a tough game either way. I mean, Mississippi State's probably still going to be that same team as they were last year. You never know, but it's kind of a rebuild there for them. Florida here at home, I probably could put this one as a 50-50 game, but, you know, I got to put it here in the purple because, you know, I don't really know what Florida's going to look like. I'm kind of concerned about Florida right now. I don't know what the roster is going to look like. Anthony Richardson's gone. I know Florida beat South Carolina last year at home, but this year it's on the road for Florida. South Carolina's got home field advantage, and that's why I got to put it in the purple. Vanderbilt, obviously another game that I probably could have put in the blue, but I'm going to stick with it and put it in the purple because every time when South Carolina and Vanderbilt face each other, it's always a good back-and-forth game. I think this year could be a little bit better, but, you know, I think South Carolina will probably still be a touchdown favorite. So, but those are the games where South Carolina, I think, is going to be about a touchdown favorite. How about the games where South Carolina is going to be an underdog? I do have one orange game on the schedule here at 20%. They're going to be about a couple touchdowns of an underdog. And I just got one game, like I said, and that's on the road at Georgia. I really don't see South Carolina maybe winning this one. I mean, I don't really see them, you know, giving even close. The game was not even close last year either, so I don't think South Carolina has what it takes to compete with Georgia. Maybe it's a few minutes or two, but I think South Carolina clearly won't be, you know, having a chance to get against Georgia. Georgia is loaded right now. Obviously, they're defending national champions, and they probably could wind up being a three-peat. You never know. But, I mean, to play them in early September is obviously tough, and that's really tough for South Carolina. They have to play them, you know, in their first SEC game every year. It seems like almost every year, so that's pretty tough there. We now go to the games where South Carolina is going to be a heavy underdog in at 40%. In the yellow games. Do I have any on the schedule? I do got one game on that schedule, and that's Texas A&M on the road. Now, people are probably going to be wondering why I put this one in the yellow, because Texas A&M wasn't that good last year, but let's be honest. At Kyle Field, it's a pretty tough place to play. I think this is going to be an underdog game for South Carolina, Besides, it's a game that's in late October. And it's going to be where by the time where teams get better, and Texas A&M probably should be really better than they were last year. The one thing that concerns me about Texas A&M is obviously the quarterback position, and what kind of concerns me about South Carolina here is that their offense. Can they move the ball against this Texas A&M defense? Can they handle the crowd noise? It's going to be a tough place to play. That's why I got to put this one in the yellow, but it could change. You never know. I could probably change it to a 50-50 game by the time we do our predictions like we do in May. So, but pretty much the rest of these games here on the schedule for South Carolina: North Carolina, Tennessee on the road, Missouri on the road, Kentucky at home, and then Clemson at home. I think all of these are 50-50 games. I think these are games where, pretty much will be, games where it can go either way. And I think, North Carolina obviously going to be a back-and-forth game. Tennessee on the road, every time we see South Carolina, Tennessee play, it's always going to be a good, close game. And then Missouri here on the road, it's a rival game. You never know what can happen. Same thing with Kentucky here. I know Kentucky wasn't that good last year, but I think, they'll be better this year with Devin Leary coming in, hopefully to give him some good hopes. But this is the good news is that South Carolina will get this one at home. And then the Clemson game, obviously another rival game that can go either way. Obviously, South Carolina beat them last year, so they could make it 2 in a row. You never know about Clemson, though. They could probably, surprise a little bit of people. The question is, I'm kind of concerned about is the quarterback position for them as well. So, but let's get to the projection. This is not simply a prediction. This is simply a projection. But before we go, how many games do I see South Carolina winning out of those 50-50 games? Well, I probably see them winning, 3 out of those 5 games on the schedule. Like, maybe they can beat North Carolina, or maybe 2 out of those 5 games. North Carolina probably could be a winnable game. Kentucky and Clemson, obviously, both are at home. Those are very winnable games. Missouri and Tennessee on the road, those are tough games to play, but I think those are pretty much games where I think they can go either way. So I see them winning 2 out of those 5 games that I picked to go 50-50 games. So let's get to the projection now. Like I said, it's not simply a prediction. South Carolina, you look at the games that they're favored in and also the games that they're underdogs in. And also if you look at the 50-50 games that are on here, the overall projected record for this South Carolina team in 2023 comes out to be 8-4 in 2023. So the same record of last year in the regular season. I think the South Carolina team maybe has what it takes to go 9-3, probably perhaps. You get Florida at home. That's the good news. But the schedule is pretty tough. Let's be honest. I can't put them at 9-3 for right now. Maybe I can put them there when we do our predictions. But yeah, as of right now, 8-4 is the overall projected record. Like I said, this schedule is really tough. It's you got Georgia on the road, Tennessee on the road, Texas A&M on the road, Missouri obviously on the road, and they got North Carolina, a non-conference game to kick off the year. So yeah, this schedule is not that easy. But as of right now, I got this team as a projected record of overall at 8-4. And I think worst case scenario for this team would be 7-5. If they were to go 7-5, that's kind of disappointing if they did go 7-5 in 2023. But I think 8-4 is probably the mid case scenario, and 9-3 would be the best case scenario. So, but South Carolina, I got them as an overall projected record of 8-4. Let me guys know what you think about this projected record down in the comments below. And stay tuned here for sports content on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.